I'm so grateful for the art program in the UK.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm so grateful that a brown person is has been, has created the has helped in evolving that ground.
Now, the more I use this AI, and I think a mutual friend of ours said, Niraj, he said something to me quite interesting. He said, um, we are humanizing robots and robotizing humans.
Humans.
I mean, the whole idea of, the art and cultural environment is to bring people together, to think again,
Yeah.
to connect. So, it's a real mantra of mine.
Mm.
My mantra is, in art we trust.
That's a good one. In art, we trust. Skinder Hundal has a long innings of international collaborations in the field of art and culture, working across art forms. His international experience includes Commissioner of the British Pavilion at the Venice Biennale 2024, TED Global, Google Cultural Institute, the World Economic Forum, and these are only some of them. Until a few months ago, he was the Global Arts Director for the British Council. He is an MBE, Member of the Order of the British Empire, which is an honor awarded by the King or Queen for contributions to the arts, sciences, and charitable work. At present, he is Associate World Cities Cultural Forum. This conversation with him was for me a peek into an intriguing world that I have never ever had before. Have a listen. Hello, hello. Welcome, guys, to the podcast Theatre of Joy. Today, we have an international guest for you. Very exciting to have Skinder Hundal, who's from the UK, who was born in the UK, and he's a very important man there now. He is, right now, the director of the British Council. I'm old. The director of?
Well, Director of Arts at British Council.
Okay. He's the director of arts at British Council, and as you must have gathered, he's going to tell you himself what that is and what he does and what his life has been. He's in a very exciting place right now. He has been for a while. He's in the middle of the art scene, and he travels to all the countries, everywhere. He works with artists at the grassroots level, at the level of world, let's say the World Economic Forum, and his presence is there everywhere. And I'll stop now because we have to talk to Skinder Hundal and he will tell us exactly what he's doing.
Well, thank you, Harleen, for such an impressive introduction you gave me. Thank you very much. Well, just so that you're aware that I've just finished my term as Director of Arts of British Council.
Okay.
So what happens is the director comes in for 4 years and does a 4-year term, and then somebody new comes in. So if ever you watch the Doctor Who series on television in the UK, the Doctor changes and there's a transition.
Yes.
So now,
And the series goes on.
Exactly, the series goes on. But the core essence of the role remains, and that is building international relations across the world through art and culture.
Yes.
And that's what I do and continue to do, because now I work independently. I'm part of an organization called the World Cities Culture Forum, which is very much about creating creative policy in the major cities and conurbations where there are big populations, and how art and culture plays an active role in transforming communities, economies, and collaborations across the world.
And all your experience and vision that was evolved during the time you were the director is there. It has become part of that organization, the ground on which the new person will come. And yes, that's interesting.
Well, Harleen, a lot of this is about personality and character, and the important part of being a cultural leader in an international organization is to enable not only your personality and characteristics to share the joy, as you talked earlier on about the joy of theatre or the joy of life, is to enable and provide for others around you to find this autonomy, but to find this autonomy within a collaborative sensibility. So it's very important to have your unique, distinct presence. And that's what art allows. If you think about artists, they have a distinct perspective. It's like a thumbprint in a way.
That's very well put.
Yeah. So it's enabling the thumbprint to fingerprint the world, but do in a way where it shuffles and shares and doesn't become something that's so egocentric. So a lot of my work throughout, I guess, all these years has been about enabling and engaging and providing the unseen voice and story a platform. And in the work I did with British Council was very much about enabling new voices across the world to connect. Because there is obviously a status quo that we are challenging as creatives and artists. And within big systems and bureaucracies, there is a danger that we also replicate this. So one has to self-check and guard against becoming this.
Yeah, and it's a balancing act, right?
Yeah.
To what we're calling the unseen and unheard voices can get drowned in the economic, excitement of the economics of the art world.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in the UK, we're fortunate that we have a funding system which allows for, therefore, experimentation and innovation. A lot of the world doesn't have this system, so it has to find a way to survive. And some of that way to survive is subscribing to, in a sense, what I say is kind of maybe more of a kind of populist kind of culture. And that's not necessarily what art is about. It's inclusive of art because you can be creative within that spectrum as well.
So could you say more of that for the viewers to, appreciate what you're saying? Because it's huge what you're saying.
Yeah, I think if we're too market-driven, too driven around what others want, what others need, or what we perceive as being the marketplace, but we're not market creating, or we're not.
And the market includes the funding agencies.
Yes, I mean the stakeholder within the market is huge. You've got the audiences, you've got the consumer, the buyer, the collector. You've got the institution, you've got the venues, you've got the festivals, you've got the governments, you've got the politicians, you've got businesses. The list goes on. And actually, the non-human. So we have to be also conscious
non-human, like in AI?
Well, there is the AI conundrum that
actually the
worries
world is going to totally change. It's changing already.
I had the fortune recently to speak in a place called Davos
World Economic
during
Forum,
the World Economic Forum, and there was a launch of a new think tank called Value AI. So it's bringing the human value into artificial intelligence. And my argument was that artistic intelligence needs to be embedded within artificial intelligence.
Yes, I meant to ask you.
Yeah.
So how would you talk about artistic intelligence?
Well,
because it's not a much used term, I think.
Artistic intelligence.
Yes.
Yeah, no, it's not. I think there is a danger that it's seen as entertainment or something as an escapism. But actually it's the central core that I believe asks the question between what sits between the yes and the no and the zero and the one. So there's millions and trillions of permutations or permeations of thought and thinking is where art explores and creativity explores. And there we find different ways of looking at the world. So if we can look at the world in a new way and think again, we find that our original idea and solution is not so significant. It's not shifting the pace.
Like sort of.
So for example, my thing is that, art is in argument and collision in a sense with culture and tradition. And there's nothing wrong with culture and tradition and ritual because it offers, in a sense, stability. However, it's not always right. So, for example, the gender imbalance within our cultures is quite apparent. These things we need to think again about. So how do we bring that creative perspective? When we think about the planet or we think about other animals beyond the human, how do we sensitively, with empathy, engage a society that has a deeper consciousness about it? My whole thing was about...
So do you mean, I mean, that's a terrible term, social engineering? Like kind of looking to operate for change?
Well, naturally, creative experiences and artistic stories offer an emotional perspective. For me, it's about art that unlocks, in a sense, our understanding of self and others. And emotions play a huge role. Whether we're angry, whether we're happy, or whether we're sad, or whether we're in love or in awe of something, we have to be aware of what triggers this.
And that's the space between 0 and 1.
Well, there are many ways that things can be interpreted, yes. And I was on a call earlier on and somebody mentioned common sense. Well, it's common sense to do this. I said, well, everybody's common sense is very different. So commonalities shift and change based on your experience of the world you're in. And I think the more you read, the more you experience life, the more you travel, the more you engage and create and produce yourself.
That last is the important thing.
It shifts your perspective.
Because you have to be engage in creative. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, for sure. So it's not social engineering. It's actually engaging with the world in a way that sort of, it might self-engineer, and it might be subconscious, subliminal, or it might be very, very much a direct shift that you purposely want to shift within your thinking.
Yeah, and then you will naturally, your creative process is part of you. And
right.
That exchange, that engagement will affect society.
For sure.
Actually, this is really very important what you're saying, because right now we have people who loudly express themselves. So old patterns and old social, in whatever structures are breaking. But because you can talk, so there's the social media and there is the street, and there are no apparently no obstructions to what you can say, right? And in that, earlier we used to, when I was growing up, it would be okay, respect this person's religion, respect where this person is coming from. But right now, things are more complicated, and they're going to get complicated with AI, because we've had the experience of ChatGPT, and somehow there are some questions you can't ask, even the DeepSeek now. There's some questions you ask and the AI will tell you, I'm not allowed to answer this.
So
right?
it's kind of programmed.
So it's very important for people to understand about what you have called the alternative space, where art is allowed to just be.
Harleen, I'll tell you a story recently. So a friend of mine has been getting me to use this AI device. And, I get it to help write a speech, for example. I'm going to Liverpool biennial, I'm going to do a big speech. ChatGPT, tell me, what should I say as Director of Arts for British Council in this environment to a public that is travelling from
You get a lot of...
Right. What I got was a good answer.
Oh, yes.
But guess what? It didn't have masala.
I know.
No mirch, no masala, nothing. It was bland, it was organized, it was transactional.
Yeah.
What it missed was the intuition.
Uh-huh.
Now, the more I use this AI, and I think a mutual friend of ours said, Niraj, he said something to me quite interesting. He said, we are humanizing robots and robotizing humans. It made me laugh. And I thought, yeah, it's so true. By overindulging within this system of artificial intelligence, you can robotize. The other thing is if the algorithm controls what you read and what you engage with, you're also being controlled.
Yeah.
The whole idea of art is to lose control.
Yes, and that's why I want you to really speak about that little space that you're talking about
Yeah.
within the junkification, as you say, of the world, where everybody's fed starch and sugar, and that is addictive, right? And AI is addictive, and that space just gets obscured. It's just not there. I mean, there are more serious consequences for the AI creating art.
Look, I mean, we're living in very precarious times.
Very, very.
Whether it's political leadership or whether it's young people's neurological patterns shifting and changing, or whether it's intergenerational, older generations feeling isolated, all of this is happening. Plus, this idea of polarized ideologies between communities.
Yeah.
We want a world, surely we want a world that's happier and healthier and has
More harmonious.
peace of mind.
Yeah.
I read a beautiful thing at Documenta in Kassel, Germany, and there was a curatorial group called Juan Guapa. I'm probably not pronouncing it properly, but one of the artists has put in on the wall as a slogan, inner peace equals outer peace. And I think this is really important. You know, this idea of inner peace and peace of mind, creating peace within society, because with peace, you can collaborate. In conflict, war, and separation, you're always watching your back, or you're spending your time in courts and battles, or on the battlefield getting killed.
And life without art, like you only said somewhere, that art helps us to make sense of the world.
Yes.
You know, and a artistic performance or a product or whatever, this helps us to see the world in a very different way. But the artist needs to have that space.
For sure. And I think an artist alone can't do it. So I always remember a good friend of mine who is an interesting, her name's Suri Pillay, and she did this very interesting sort of talk for me when she used to work with me. And she mentioned something about art and what is art and who owns this art. Well, the art, the normal thing is to say, well, an art piece is made by the artist, so it's their IP. Well, in market terms, yes, that is very true. The idea comes from the artist, and therefore. But the art actually is produced in a way, putting into perspective the context of the wider society, or the specific sort of spectrum within which the artist is working. But in the end, when it engages, it sits with the audience as ownership, it sits with the person who might buy the art, or it sits with the presenting organisation and the festival or the venue. So it's actually owned by so many stakeholders.
Yes.
And I think that is what creates this more open dialogue. So it's about creating open dialogue in several spaces. Now, earlier you were talking about the world we're in, and I was saying it's shifting. And what I wanted to share with you folks was something really special I experienced recently. I was in Switzerland. The mountains were watching. They were almost like, sheltering us from the environment beyond, giving this amazing height and light of wisdom, in a sense. And there in front of me was Deepak Chopra, the quantum physicist. And he said, 20 years from now, the world will not be recognizable. It will be so unrecognizable that you cannot imagine what that is now. This obviously sent shockwaves. He said there are two pathways at play. One is the idea of self-extinction. The other one is a road where it will have a deeper conscious sensibility and a relationship with technology to create what is known as a meta-human. So the idea of a technology,
A meta-human.
yeah, a
Oh,
meta-human.
okay, wow.
So technologized human being, but has a deeper consciousness as well. Because without that, you would have the extinction route.
Yeah.
Or, as I would put it, the distinction route. So it's about creating distinction. So art is here for me about creating spaces to engage, but shifting information into knowledge that becomes wisdom. So it's the wisdom that then defines our pathway. And good wisdom, well, we all know that leads to a healthier, happier, more fulfilling life.
Such a tall order right now in the chaos that we are experiencing in the world.
Well, that's when I'd have a big sigh. But it's like, but how?
Yeah, but
How?
if you be in the space of possibility, what is possible?
Yes.
You know, art, yeah, this should be spoken loud and clear and more in different spaces. That let the artists be, you know, whatever. Here, like, there's such a scramble for funds that all the lovely creative people are making, say, art about AIDS or about, you know, stuff that they know they'll get a grant for.
Oh, there is that.
And yeah, I mean, that's the ugly part of making art and the market.
You know, it's not an easy environment. I can understand, and you can see why that happens because you're kind of forced into it. But I think this is what we've got to challenge. You know, there's the whole idea of integrity, you know, within how one thinks and works, and sticking to a principle that not is so rigid that it shatters if hit. It needs to flex, you know,
Yeah.
it needs to flex as well. So the principle needs to be flexible in the sense, in terms of self-principle about why you do what you do. But I always believe that, you know, a purpose, a series of questions you put out there that audiences can respond to is a good way forward. The issue is that you're right, funders do sometimes dictate the terms, and we have the same in the UK too.
Yeah, I'm so grateful for the art program in the UK. And I'm so grateful that a brown person has been, you know, has created has helped in evolving that ground. And they, it's a good job, whatever. They might be, you know, good sometimes and not so good sometimes, but then reaching out all over the world with the Commonwealth, you know, has been. It's amazing. It's like creating a network of people who which wouldn't be there otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, when I just often just get on with it and don't think of it in such a way. For me, it was always about participating in a way that could bring positive change, enable the unseen.
Since the funds are there,
Yeah,
and the opportunity is there,
right.
why not?
But a lot of people didn't. I remember when I was offered the very senior role, people said to me, yes, you should do it, Skins. You should definitely do this because we need you on the inside to help us understand how it works. And I said, for that reason, I'll do it, actually. Because you're right, because with symbolic representation attracts
Not
in a
only
sense.
symbolic, it's so
Yeah,
many
it's- yeah.
invisible little
Yeah.
inputs that come because you're from a
Right.
different culture.
That's for sure. Yeah, and I think you bring that to the table
Yeah.
in the conversation. So you bring a different value system, a different contextual history, and a deeper understanding on certain topics that others won't have good sort of experience of. So you bring that lived experience into this space.
Yes, and you put this so beautifully earlier, which I would put it as, okay, it's not about you, but it is about you. You know, and you understand that.
I do. Yeah.
Yes, and that is that's what you can create in, you know, say West Bengal or Nigeria where you have been
Yes.
working, and so that's the beauty of it.
Well, I mean, that's one of the big privileges of that role was that I
Yes.
got to travel and
Yes,
connect across all
and
continents.
it's a very unique role. There
Yeah.
isn't that opportunity in other countries, you know.
Well, I think the good thing about UK, it does have a good funding infrastructure, and the government takes culture seriously. Because they invest a good billion just from Arts Council, and then all the local authorities add to that. And then there are other trusts and foundations and corporate sponsors that make it a bigger thing, a bigger
Yeah,
wave
because
of investment.
once it's something is going, then people help out.
Yeah, and I think the most important thing about the funding is that it doesn't control the narrative and the story, that it allows for all sorts of stories to happen and come to the fore. And we've worked hard in the UK to look at cultural diversity. So we've really invested in looking at the demographics of cities and looked at who actually receives this money. And in the last round for Arts Council, for example, there was an incredible shift in younger organizations, organizations from global majority communities, people of color, LGBT communities,
Oh, wow.
and all of that.
It sounds like music to the
Yeah.
ears. Because it's not happening. In the
Right.
other places, things are going bad, worse, you know.
Yeah. Well, look,
And it's like an example for everyone. And maybe just that you guys be, you know, makes a difference in the world.
in the UK and Europe, there is also a rise of fascism, though, and there is a rise of that. Where communities are feeling under pressure, whether they're immigrant traveling communities or whether they're minority groups, they do feel the pressure of society, and the majority society are also, fed stories which aren't actually true or factual, and they fuel hatred. I mean, the whole idea of the art and cultural environment is to bring people together, to think again, to connect. So it's a real mantra of mine. My mantra is in art we trust.
That's a good one. In art, we trust.
Yeah,
Wow.
and art is, for me, art realizing a transcending idea. So it transcends our thinking
Yeah.
into spaces of wisdom. So it's not just us deciphering information for for action. It's actually deepening how we act and behave. Action is necessary though,
Yes.
but in a positive way. So we're talking about positive engagement, not negative action.
Creative is positive.
Yes, for sure.
And what I'm afraid of, it's terrifying. That is exciting and terrifying. The artificial intelligence, that is the chaos that is now happening, and I think we need to really reiterate.
A friend of mine who wrote a really strong digital strategy when I was working, Hannah Robinson. It was, or maybe I got the right, Hannah Andrews, sorry, not Robinson. Hannah Andrews wrote this very interesting strategy. And it was basically saying that we can ignore artificial intelligence and carry on for sure. But actually, that's dangerous. And actually, we should be informing artificial intelligence as artists, creatives.
You can't ignore it. You'll be taken over by energies that are not
Excuse me.
artistic.
That's AI intervening. And saying, stop talking negative about me.
Skinder, you need not to be saying these things.
Anyway, talking too much. But yeah, I mean, I think we can't ignore technology, and it's advantageous as much as it can be not so advantageous. So, but we need to use it in a way that's enabling and exploring the questions that really matter.
Yeah. I guess we're getting out of time.
And my voice is going.
Thank you so much. I feel so honored. So honored.
Privileged to
And
be
I
here.
feel so, good.
Can I just
to be
say,
talking to you, because your experience and the wide experience you've had, the whole panorama is like
can I
so
share something
valuable.
with you before we finish?
Yes.
We're sitting here in the house of Johnny Singh. And in 2006, I met this great exuberant character with yourself, and your children were very young at the time, in the marketplace, Sector 17. And it was our good friend Ranjit Sondhi who introduced, and his sister Jayashree. When I met this exuberant fella and saw the work he did, that was a defining moment. A defining moment that made me realize the power of art, theatre, and challenging some of the big issues of our world today with the street children of Chandigarh. It was a mind-blowing thing. So to come back in 2025, which is 19 years later, to sit here with his picture above, in a sense for us like a Guruji of sorts, in a way. He brought light, you know, and in this room with the family is an extraordinary experience. And I'm blessed that I met this fella, because, you know, these defining moments also shift who you are. And I would say Mr. Johnny Singh was one of them people who shifted many lives.
He has changed so many lives, including ours.
Yes, no, for sure.
Yes.
And we should do more about Mr. Johnny Singh's philosophy, you know, at some stage. You know, I mean, it's happening because it's in the work you're all doing. But I think, you know,
his philosophy was there in his aura.
Yeah.
He didn't have to speak much.
Now the aura is everywhere, and it's joining ourselves.
It's still here, yes.
Yeah. Well, I'm a deep believer in the fact that, you know, our souls shift in dimensions. So we're in constant dialogue with Mr. Johnny Singh even now.
Yes, we are.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you
been a
so
pleasure.
much for that. Thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
It's such
And
a
maybe,
joy.
say 10 years ahead, when we are both older, we can have another chat.
Have another chat. We could
Maybe not so long, 5 years.
Maybe we could do a little biennial.
Yes.
Or triennial, give it a little gap. Because I think triennials are good because you have at least 3 years to.
Yes.
You need 3 years to make
stuff
things
more experience into your
but also to deliver your manifesto. You need 5 years, really, but 3 years is a good.
So 5 years it is.
Well, 5 years. 5 years, and every 5 years you could do this.
Same again in 5 years. Thank you so much for
All right.
listening. Thank you.
Thank you.